let's talk about some newer Touch of Glam shades. These have launched a couple months ago at this point, and I am finally getting to reviewing them. I'm going to be showing you swatches, swatch comparisons, as well as two looks. And there's a lot of new shades, including some mattes, and these are all single eyeshadows. I don't believe the collection had a name, but here are all of the newer shades to Touch of Glam. So the top 5 are all holographic multichromes, and then the rest of the shimmers are variations in different textures and formulas, and then the bottom 5 are all mattes. And I will be talking about the textures in detail during the first part of the swatches, and all of these were sent to me in PR from Touch of Glam Beauty, so thank you so much for sending it over to me. I do have a non-affiliate code with them as well that works on their Etsy as well as their website. They do have a website now. I believe they launched it maybe like 6 months ago or something like that, and it is definitely much easier to navigate than the Etsy. I think the way the Etsy is just designed, it's just a little bit trickier, especially when you have a lot of products like Touch of Glam Beauty. They have so many beautiful shimmer shades, and I do believe that they have one of the best, if not the best, holographic multichrome eyeshadows. So very, very excited to see more of those from them. So as I mentioned, there's a couple of different textures. There's some really flaky ones, somewhat flaky ones, and then some really smooth, just metallic ones that are not necessarily really sparkly. As for the mattes, this is my first time trying Touch of Glam Beauty mattes, and I do really love the assortment of the shades. They're definitely on the grungier side, with the exception of course of this one. Let's just roll all the footage. There's a lot to get through, and I will be giving you my thoughts at the end of the video.
You Had Me at Hollow is described as a super shiny red orange that shifts green to yellow and has hollow. I definitely see orange in there, but more in the shift, and it shifts all the way to green at a harsh angle. It's more of a pinky red. It's definitely not like a true red, but even straight on I don't really see the orange. It's really mostly in the shift, and definitely the hollow is in there as well. It feels very smooth. The usual Touch of Glam formula. Soda Pop Hollow is described as super shiny, peachy, rose gold, shifting yellow gold to light green with hollow in it. I don't think I see peachy. It's definitely rose gold. It's like almost taupe pink straight on. It's definitely lighter than the previous shade, and also in the base. I think it has less of a grayish base. And in this shift, I see the peach and then the yellow. Very smooth, same formula between all the hollows. Hollow Voodoo You Pink is a super shiny fuchsia pink to lavender peach, gold, and hollow. Don't see the gold too much. Maybe very at a harsh angle with the lighting. Definitely see the lavender. It's a cooler toned purple for sure. About the same opacity as the first shade, so it is a little bit darker. Breath of Fresh Hollow is described as a periwinkle, greenish grungy blue that shifts to purple, pink, and has hollows. It does also have a staining warning in the description, which I can tell this is going to stain just from swatching it, because my finger is already stained from just swatching, so something to keep in mind. Definitely see the periwinkle. It's almost like a lavender, maybe like a lavender or periwinkle. A very bright teal base to it, especially straight on. And then I do see that green, bright green shift. The last of the hollows, that One Day Hollow, super shiny denim blue hollow. I don't think there's really a shift in this one. It is definitely a denim blue. It's really, really pretty, very shiny and very smooth. The Gobbling Goblin, a peachy taupe with green shift with multicolored pink and blue sparkle. Definitely think that's a very accurate description. It has a little bit of a taupe base to it. Really only seen at an angle, and very smooth. Gelato on My Mind is a pale champagne yellow, yellow-based iridescent with a hint of peach gold with pink and purple flashes. I also see a little bit of a chartreuse in there as well, but kind of mostly at specific angles. And Gelato on My Mind is a little bit more textured. It feels a little bit flaky. My Life Is a Screenshot is an icy teal blue with purple shift and hot pink and orange flashes. Super, super sparkly shade. And this shade also feels a little bit flaky to the touch, but it does smooth out. I see a little bit of a orangey yellow base. Oh Biscuits is a champagne lilac gold shade with peach and green sparkles. I think this one has a little bit of a taupe and a really cool tone, light pink, if not like slightly mauve. And this one feels a little bit textured, but it is creamy, so it does smooth out. The Koosh Era is an olive to lime green shade that shifts to pink purple with taupe silver sparkles. So this one has a little bit of a light brownish base to it. Definitely see the shift to a pinky purple, and the lime green is really straight on. Don't Mess With Moi is an aqua teal blue green that shifts lavender to purple with lots of pink and purple flashes. I definitely see the purple flashes like more like kind of flex throughout, but I wouldn't say that there's like a lot or they're predominant. I think the aqua teal is very apparent straight on, and then the shift to purple. And this one seems to have just a little bit of an aqua or tealish base. Sweet Revenge is very smooth, and this one is a magenta that shifts to antique green orange to gold. I think the green is all the way at the end, and then I see the antique gold and the orange kind of in between. It's not quite a black base multichrome, but it's also not quite like a gray base multichrome. It's kind of like an in-between. Definitely has a little bit of a darker base to it. Dead Roses is a very metallic, cool tone red. I don't think it's that metallic. It's definitely shiny, but it's not like the shiniest or sparkliest. It's almost kind of like between a metallic and a satin. I feel like it's a little bit in between. Shattered Stars is described as a rich deep blue to purple, shifting shade with green, pink, purple flashes. This one definitely has a darker base to it. You can see it on the edges. I can see the purple shift of kind of flex throughout it. Think kind of like Matthew from Odin's Eye, but obviously a totally different color, but similar with all the different flex throughout it. Really interesting shade. This one felt a little bit textured, but it completely smoothed out. The shade feels very creamy. It was a little bit uneven spreading it out. How Very Dare You is a smoky black forest green that shifts blue green with gold green and orange sparkles. I do see the orange sparkles, but they're not really predominant, and it's a very dark shade. Definitely has a black base too. You can see it on the edges kind of feathering out. And this is very smooth. Nothing most metallic, but it has a little bit of sparkle to it. This last shade I'm going to live swatch. It is called Soulmate, and it is a rusty brown with purple shift and blue sparkle, and it is a flaky formula, and it is said to be on the drier side, better suited for those with oily lids. And this shade, right off the bat, when I first got it, this is how it swatches. I don't feel that it's dry. I feel like the flakes are actually really weirdly kind of suspended in this formula, and I can't spread it out because I already tried it on the lid and it was not great. It's almost like the flakes are not mixed properly with the binder, and it's just not wanting to spread, so this is what it looks like. And here it is evened out. I'm not sure if you can see, but the flakes are just like kind of awkwardly textured in there. It's such a cool concept for a shade. I really like the shade itself. I just don't like the execution. Definitely not something I would want to fuss with getting ready for works. I feel like it's just a little bit too hard to use. Picked up Spicy Dijon, and I'm going to put that right into the inner crease of my lid and a little bit onto the lid as well. Then I'm picking up Freaky Subconscious. Same brush, just wiped it off. And I'm just going to put that on the outer half. Just going to blend them kind of together right in the center. Taking a clean brush with some setting powder on it, I'm just going to go over the edges. And then blending further, blending together. For the shimmer, I'm going to use the Gobbling Goblin. And I'm just going to use my finger. I'm just going to tap it on all over. I think that this shade goes so well. The first finished look. Picked up basic gnome behavior and I'm just popping that into the crease. And I'm just taking a little bit more and just trying to blend it outwards over here. Just a little bit more here. And just blending, blending, blending. I'm gonna also pick up some setting powder just to help it kind of move around a little bit more. Picked up Smoked Out, and it's just gonna go on this outer corner. But I'm going to keep it very close to my lash line. And just a little bit. Just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. Very focused in here. I'm just gonna go back to the fluffier brush and just lightly connect it to the lower lash line. I'm going to be using You Had Me at Hollow. Ooh. And I'm just going to tap it on from the inner lid to my outer corner. And then I'm going to take the brush and I'm just going to blend the edge. That is so sparkly. And here it is with Flash. I have a lot of thoughts and they're kind of mixed thoughts. I love the holochromes for sure. As I mentioned, Touch of Glam Beauty does those really, really well. They definitely have nailed it down and they are a standout formula in terms of holochromes. I really do enjoy them. They're very easy to use. They're not gritty at all whatsoever and they're very, very holographic, but also remaining shifty and not being gray. So nothing negative to say about those. If I was to choose favorites, it would definitely be this one and this one. This one I'm actually wearing on the lid kind of right here. And then I'm wearing something, Life is a Screenshot. I was like, I know it was something with a screenshot. This one I'm wearing on the inner corner and on the inner lid here. And this one is super dimensional. Love this one. A little bit on the PC side, so it has a little bit of texture, but it's not dry and flaky compared to like this shade and this shade. And then I think generally speaking, I will not be really gravitating towards these two shades. Just not really something I personally go for. I really enjoy these two really smooth mattes. While they're not the most sparkly or the most shiny or metallic, they're definitely still really, really beautiful. And then the rest of the shades are definitely a little bit more on the texture side, so I would recommend some sort of a glitter primer or glitter glue of your preference. Now let's talk about this shade Soulmate. I was so excited for it because it looked really interesting in the pan. It's a brown shimmer with blue flecks throughout it. It's a really, really interesting kind of concept. However, in execution, not really the greatest. I would go as far and say that this is a dud, especially when it comes to this release. It's just not like anything I've experienced from Touch of Glam Beauty. In my experience, it's pretty unusable. Even just from swatching, I could tell something was off about it. It's really, really chunky. It's really, really hard to even swatch out. You have to keep going back and forth, and even then, it's like the flakes just don't want to fully smooth out or just even like fully coat, I guess. Like you can't really get a full opaque like nice swatch compared to especially some of these other better shimmer shades in here. So this one for me is a dud. I did try using it on the lid and it was kind of a real pain to use, and it was very finicky, very tricky, and is definitely not something I will see myself really wanting to reach for and fuss around with, especially if I'm going to work. It's just not something I will have time for. Maybe you purchased it and maybe you love it. Please let me know how you're using it because I tried so many different ways on top of primers. I actually feel like tacky primer made it almost worse because it just really stuck down and then I couldn't spread it out further on the lid. So it's just really unfortunate because it is such a cool shade and I would love to see more shades like this from them, but in this kind of more just smoother, shinier, sparklier formula from them, or even the PC formula. Like if this shade was this formulation, it would be amazing. It would be definitely one of my top favorite shades just because of the colors. I don't remember ever getting anything from Touch of Glam Beauty where I was like, this is not a good eyeshadow. So
I don't know, it could just be the pigment, the nature of the pigment and their formula just don't mesh well together or something like that, where this is what it just created. But yeah, I would just stay away from that shade. So onto the mattes. Unfortunately, it's a very, very powdery formula, and if you've been on my channel, you watched some of my previous, more recent videos, you'll know I don't like really powdery formulas. I find them harder to work with. Again, personal preference. Everyone has different preferences on what kind of formulas they like to use, what works for them, and this is just not a formula that works for me. Like I said, there is so much kick up in the pan, which I usually don't mind to an extent, but in this case it's just really, really powdery, and I find that it's harder to blend out and get a really nice smooth blend. Like I can't blend it to the extent that I want it to be blended. When I use a shade for this look, I had a lot of trouble getting it to blend out. I actually had to redo one of the eyes because it just kind of really stuck down. I also noticed that it darkened up a little bit on top of the primer, and I was just using the Pat McGrath primer, which most eyeshadows blend really nicely on that one. There's matte formulas that I love that I can get a blend in a quarter of the time that I can get with these eyeshadows, unfortunately. So I don't really see myself reaching for these mattes a lot, while I do love the tones, and they are definitely pigmented. Like these kinds of formulas swatch the best when they're very powdery. You get a lot of pigmentation, but I just think that the powder tends to want to blend away a little bit and not really blend into the skin. So just keep in mind my preference, knowing what you know, seeing how they perform, seeing how they swatch, and that they're powdery. If that sounds like a formula you love, then you will definitely enjoy these. Just not for me. At this point, I have tried so many different matte formulas, and I feel like I really know what I like, and I tend to really just want to use what I like in terms of formulations. I want to know what I'm getting myself into, and I like knowing that the blend will be the same no matter the eyeshadow primer. So unfortunately, I'm ending this video on a negative note, but I love the holochromes and I love the rest of the shimmers with the exception of this guy. So those are my thoughts on these newest Touch of Glam Beauty eyeshadows. Let me know in the comments below if you purchased any of these, if you've been using them, and what you think of them. I would love to hear your thoughts, and that's everything for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.